everyone, and welcome back. My name is Kaley Gray, and I am so excited that you're joining me today. But first, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and also give this a thumbs up. And I would also love to hear from you on my other social media accounts, so be sure to connect with me on them. So you probably saw by today's title, blind dates. Do we like them? Do we not like them? Would you ever do one? In the comments, put, have you ever been on a blind date? Or maybe you set somebody up on a blind date, or maybe you met your person on a blind date. So I want to know, put it in the comments. I'm gonna share my experience. So yes, I did go on a blind date. It was last summer. And let me just say, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad blind date. But it was interesting. So let me start, rewind. Let me just start from the beginning. So I had somebody approach me. Now, I will not just go on any blind date with that anybody wants to set me up with. The people that I allow to set me up on blind dates are usually people that I'm close with, that kind of know my heart, my character, and so I don't just let anybody set me up on a blind date, and they kind of know what I would be looking for. And so anyway, so I had somebody approach me and said if I would ever be on a blind date, and I said yes. And they're like, okay, great, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, oh wow, because usually when people say that, they're just like, would you ever be interested? And then it takes them a while if they see somebody. But no, this person had somebody in mind right away. And so I think I only had a few days to process everything that was going on. And I get a text saying I don't even know what this guy looks like. I don't know his name. I know nothing about him. This is a legit blind date. And I'm just told to show up at the air hockey tables at Main Event, which Main Event is Dave & Buster's and stuff. They have arcade bowling, food and stuff like that. So wearing a specific thing so that we would be able to recognize each other. And I just was oh my gosh, this is so crazy. But anyway, so I did it. I was what's the worst that could happen? And so anyways, so I go, and I meet this person. The crazy thing is I did know the guy that I was there. So I guess it technically wasn't a complete blind date. We had only met in passing, and maybe talked a couple times, not talked, but had a conversation. So it was a blind date in the aspect that I didn't know anything about this person, but I had seen them before. And so we were just both laughing, oh my gosh, it's you, which kind of made the nerves not as nervous, I think, for both of us, because this was both of our first times having a blind date. So anyways, so we ended up bowling first, which was a lot of fun. I highly recommend that. I am not the best bowler, but I always have fun doing it, and it's a great way to kind of break the ice and have conversation. I love activities as a first date, and so I think it's great. Just kind of allows you to loosen up, be yourself. You can joke around, be playful, and have fun. So so that was really fun that we did that, and then we ended up eating and then talking, and was able to ask more conversations. And so the blind date went well. Of course, it was, I felt the conversation flowed naturally. And I know some people say they would never do it. They would, I would if somebody offers it, I would say just go for it. I mean, the worst that could happen, you end up having a horrible date, but you at least put yourself out there. I don't know, I don't see a lot of cons in going on a blind date. Of course, make sure the person setting you up knows this person, so it's not just a complete crazy person. And also I always would tell a friend, they have my location, and so you know, I'm doing like a wellness check, like, hey, I'm still alive, or, you know, whatever, if I'm going to the bathroom. So, I don't know, girls do that, so. But then I would say too, another reason like people won't do blind dates is because of conversation. Now for us, like the conversation went well. I feel like I did like think of some questions and stuff that like, just like lighthearted questions and stuff to ask. And so I kind of had those in my back pocket in case like the conversation was just like, ugh, and nobody was talking. Thankfully that didn't happen. Like he was really good at asking questions and keeping the conversation going. So I really only asked a few questions. It was mainly him asking questions, which I appreciated. I really enjoyed that. And so, but I think that's a thing, like people are kind of nervous because they didn't have time to investigate the person, so they don't really know much about them. But I think it's like kind of great. Like you get to ask them questions like what they like to do, what do they do in their free time, you know, and about just different things. And so, so if you're kind of nervous about that, like look up some questions, have some questions in your back pocket. I'll put some questions in the comments below that I like to sometimes use on dates. So, after the date happened, it was fine. We both like parted ways. And for me personally, I felt very indifferent. And it wasn't that it was a bad date. I didn't know how I felt. And he was like a good looking guy too. So like he was attractive, like the conversation flowed well. We had a lot of similarities. But I just felt so indifferent and I just really didn't, I don't know, like I knew how I felt after other dates where I either wanted to see the person again or I didn't want to see them again. And so I was so indifferent, like I didn't know how I felt, like, which was like a first for me. And that's okay, like just kind of processing and working through those emotions. But I told myself, if he asked me out again, I would definitely go out. And so I think, especially with a blind date, I feel like you're more nervous, like, you know, you have no idea who's showing up. Like a lot of times, like when you talk to somebody and you've built a relationship with them beforehand, a lot of times before going on a date, so I feel like it makes the date a little bit easier. But when you're on a blind date, like you're just like, I mean, you're literally glowing and blind. Like you have no information about this person whatsoever. So you're learning everything at that moment. And so for me, I did tell myself I would give him another opportunity, like if we to go out, which he did ask me out to coffee, but our schedules kept conflicting, and then just like other stuff happened, and so we ended up like not seeing or talking to each other again, and which is fine. Like I was totally fine with it, but I don't know, I guess I'm for blind dates, and so I just wanted to do this conversation because I feel like so many people, like when you say blind date, they're like, no, not gonna do that. And so I think it's okay. Like I definitely want to encourage you to be open to it. And it's okay to, and I think it's too fine to ask friends. Like if you're like, well, nobody ever offers to set me on a blind date. Listen, y'all, like it is, it's been like, I mean, this was my first blind date, okay, in my 30s. So, it was the first time I ever went on a blind date, and I had so many people previously like ask, but they never followed through. And so like finding a friend that like you trust and be like, hey, like if you know of anybody, like I would be interested in going on a blind date. Like just like asking your friends, because I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day. I feel like, because she was like, well, I just don't know how, like we don't know anybody that we could set you up with. And then she was talking about like one of our guy friends, like I'm sure he would know somebody. And I was like, honestly, I don't feel like guys are like thinking like, hey, like I could totally set her up with this guy or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like guys don't think that way. I feel, and I could be wrong because I don't know how guys think, but I feel like girls definitely think more of like, oh, I can totally set them up with this person, you know? And so I just think guys don't always think that way, so, which is fine. So that's why sometimes I feel like you have to ask. And I think too, sometimes my married friends and things like that, they won't ask me because, like, you know, they maybe like don't want to offend me or something like that. And so, but I think sometimes you just have to make the effort and ask them, like, hey, if you know of somebody that you could set me up with, like, I totally would be open to that. And then that triggers them to start thinking of somebody who they could set you up with. And so there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you're just putting yourself out there. And so, yeah, I, you know, the blind date, you know, didn't work for me. But it was a good experience. You know, I can say that I did it. And so that's all, you know, that I can ask for. And so, I don't know, I say go on a blind date if you have the opportunity. So, hope you enjoyed this conversation that we had today. And I really want to know, put in the comments, like, if you would ever go on a blind date or if you've ever been on one. And if you have a crazy story about a blind date. So, mine thankfully wasn't too crazy, but I know there are some out there, so I'd love to hear them. So anyways, I hope that you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.